Star Wars 7x7, episode 1971. Today, how will Leia be redeemed in the Rise of Skywalker? It may seem like an odd question, but if you look at the way The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi played out, well, it kind of makes a little more sense. Punch it! Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode, and yeah, give me another maybe 2 episodes or so, and I think my voice will be back to normal at that point. But hang in there with me, it's not going to be much longer, I promise you. So, as I was thinking about The Rise of Skywalker, as I'm sure you may be as well, I got to thinking about Leia's role in it and how this was supposed to be Leia's movie in a very large sense. At least the way that the trilogy had been envisioned was that Leia's big movie was going to be 9. And because of that, Han's movie is 7 and Luke's movie is 8. But what actually is the major thread for Han and for Luke in 7 and 8? Well, it seems to be redemption for crimes of the past. And this is what's set up for us in these sequel movies. The fact that Han has to redeem himself from having left Leia and left Ben when things got difficult, and his deadbeat dad tendencies and all that sort of thing, which he ultimately does by facing his son and doing so when his life could be in jeopardy. I'm sure that it had to occur to him that something bad could happen if he was facing down his son who had turned to the dark side, and he had no expectation of bringing him back, but he went and did his best anyway, and obviously it didn't work out for him, but it's not about that, it's about the fact that he made the effort, and that's the redemption there. In episode 8, we have Luke, who finally is caught out on the mistake that he made with Ben Solo, and having that brief moment of hesitation where he thought, maybe I'll be better off by killing this kid. And despite the fact that he instantly regretted it, it was too late and the damage was done. And he removed himself from everything. He became a hermit. He took himself out of the fight just out of his guilt and shame and whatnot. And his redemption was to get over that failure and to get over his guilt and shame and come to the aid of the resistance at least one last time. So I got to thinking about, well, if it was a redemption for Han in 7 and a redemption for Luke in 8, then how are they possibly going to redeem Leia in 9? And I guess more to the point, what does she actually need to be redeemed for? So as I was toying with that whole notion, my mind cast back to this particular scene in The Force Awakens where Han and Leia have a conversation about Ben.
I know every time you look at me, you're reminded of him.
You think I want to forget him? I want him back.
There's nothing more we could have done. There's too much Vader in him.
That's why I wanted him to train with Luke. I just never should have sent him away. That's when I lost him. That's when I lost you both.
We both had to deal with it in our own way. I went back to the only thing I was ever any good at.
We both did.
We lost our son. Forever.
No, it was Snoke. He seduced our son to the dark side. But we can still save him. Me. You.
If Luke couldn't reach him, how could I?
Luke is a Jedi. You're his father. There's still light in him, I know it.
Alright, so if there is anything for which Leia needs to be redeemed, then there may be a couple of hints in that scene, and I'm going to explain my thoughts on the matter after the break. Stay tuned. Hey Rebel Rouser, I've made some changes to the asteroid belt level at patreon.com/SW7X7, and they are all with sponsors in mind. So if you want to get the word out about your business, your product, your service to a dedicated Star Wars audience, then please check out patreon.com/SW7X7 and look for the asteroid belt level for details. Again, that's patreon.com/SW7X7. Welcome back. So I think the key line in that exchange is when Leia says, "I never should have sent him away. That's when I lost him. That's when I lost you both." So when exactly did she send him away? This, I think, is the key question. Because, and we talk about Bloodline, the novel by Claudia Gray, fairly often here on the podcast, it is really the only touchstone we have at the moment that gets us anywhere near what happened with Luke and Ben and the Knights of Ren and the destruction of the Jedi Temple and so on and so forth, or the fledgling academy, if you will. What we know in that novel is that Han and Leia are still together, and Ben is off with Luke, and they are out exploring the galaxy, but she wanted him to train with Luke. That seems to be part of the whole training situation. It doesn't seem like the situation where she sent him away necessarily. And if Han is still there, well, then it's not the sending away that led to her losing Han, because that is not hinted at or intimated in any portion of Bloodline. So yeah, it doesn't really make much sense. There has to be some other event that happened after the events of Bloodline. And there is one that happens during Bloodline, the after effects of which are not felt until after the events of Bloodline, which is the galactic reveal that Darth Vader was in fact Luke and Leia's dad. And I don't think that they can use the excuse that Yoda did with Luke when he said, you know, unexpected this is and unfortunate that Luke found out that Vader was his dad. Luke said, you know, unfortunate that I know the truth. And no, Yoda says, no, unfortunate that you weren't ready, that not prepared for the burden, were you? I think, you know, Ben could have been prepared for the burden. It's possible, but then again, maybe not. I mean, Luke was, 22 years old when he found out that Vader was his dad, and Ben Solo was, oh gosh, if I can do the math, 24, 25 years old probably when he found out, or would have found out, that Darth Vader was his grandfather. So he should have been, you know, possibly more prepared for the burden than Luke Skywalker ever could have been. And so Leia is living with her own guilt and shame and regret about how she handled that situation. And if she sent him away separately from anything that we've known about or heard about, well, that could only have exacerbated things. And so that could be the main area for redemption for Leia in Episode 9, if they're able to pull it off with the footage that they have left over from The Force Awakens, and possibly leftover footage from The Last Jedi as well. Not so certain about that. I've heard it mentioned, but, you know, that was probably at least more than a year ago the last time I heard that mentioned, and only recently has it been The Force Awakens stuff, and only The Force Awakens, no mention of The Last Jedi footage. So I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see if they pursue that, but that's my thoughts on the whole redemption situation, because it seems like an interesting thread that's weaving through the sequel trilogy right now. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it as well, so chime in wherever you happen to catch the show, or if there's no comment section there, then at home base for the show at sw7x7.com. And that's going to do it for today. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode, as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
This podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox. It is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other related Star Wars items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2019 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.